Welcome to the Purpose and Process Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Baker. Today, my guest is Matt Seidel, a Midwest-born commercial portrait photographer now thriving in Los Angeles.
But I try to bake into them a much deeper story. The trick is to prioritize the conversation over the photo shoot.
Really, my job was to make the person who hired me look like a rock star from hiring.
Yeah, I want to capture someone with their guard down.
Growing up, Matt's world revolved around sports and music, but somewhere along the way he took an unexpected turn towards photography, which surprised everyone, including himself, and he's never looked back. In this episode, we'll explore how he captures authentic, powerful portraits, whether it's in a relaxed one-on-one shoot in his home in Topanga Canyon, or a large-scale production with a full crew. We'll also dig into his signature approach to simplicity. Matt also makes time for his deeply meaningful personal projects, and we'll get a good look at both sides. So please enjoy this conversation with my good friend Matt Seidel. Let's get started. Matt, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I was excited when you invited me. Every time you call me, text me, email me, I get excited.
Well,
You're like a warm cup of coffee
on
a cold morning.
Oh, well, both being coffee lovers, I'll take that.
So no, truly, I'm happy to be here.
Well, we actually worked together. We actually met when I reached out to you. I needed some shots done. I was starting a new business a little over a year ago and reached out to you because I felt that your images, portraits of people, were right in line with what I needed. I actually believed the portraits. I felt like I would know what it's like to spend time with this person. And I was really curious then to work with you, looking forward to working with you. And today I'm really curious to really dive deep on that and kind of discover more about your process.
Yeah. I remember that whole first conversation, and I was so appreciative then, and I'm now to hear it again, that you were able to see what it is that I try so hard to communicate in my portraiture, because they are simple. They're very simple.
Yes.
You can look at them and take them at face value and move from them very quickly, but I try to bake into them a much deeper story. But you really have to be willing to look for it.
Yeah.
And I think it pays off to sit with them and
yes.
There's more there, and truth and authenticity is so important to me in portraiture. I always say, like, it continues to surprise me how often the first frame I put through the camera is the shot, because it's usually the one where like all the guards are down.
Yes.
We're just gonna take a few test shots, and so often I look back and I go, that's the one.
That's the one.
Because there was no bullshit. It was just that was them. That was truly them. They weren't trying. We weren't thinking.
Yeah.
And when you first reach out to me, I was so appreciative that some people see it, some people don't.
Yeah.
I think it resonates regardless, but anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying thank you, and I appreciate you.
Well, and you mentioned the word simplicity in there, and as you and I have talked about, simple done well is absolutely the hardest thing to do, because there's nothing to hide behind. That's
kind of become my catchphrase: less is louder. I think we live in a really noisy world, and I think what really gets heard sometimes is slowing people down and saying less and doing less.
Yeah.
Silence.
Well, there's a real craving for that.
I think that's where it comes from, is my thirst for just less.
Yeah.
For slower, for less, less but better.
Part of it is about eliminating distractions so that you can see clearly through, and you are shown what you should pay attention to, and maybe what is the most important thing, at least in this split second, right? In this 125th of a second.
Yep.
Here's what matters.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about that simplicity too, and I remember during the session that I worked with you, it was a very, it was a small set. It was very intimate. You and the set and the way that you move through your process, it's very comforting. Now, I'm a photographer. I kind of know everything, but you made it really comfortable in that, even being a commercial photographer, and even that innate desire, that innate need to sort of analyze everything that you were doing as I was sitting on set back from the photo assistant days, double checking that everything's good. You had this really great way of starting the conversation, initiating the topic that took me out of that, and got straight into the relationship, the connection that we were about to have. And I think that I would be coaching myself sometimes during the session, and you would always see it, and you'd go, okay, let's come back over here, and sure enough, in those images, and it's so weird being on the other side of the camera,
Oh, I can't imagine.
but it was always those where you could sort of see me ramping up through the, when you send the session, you could see me ramping up, and then when you would force a break, and rightly so, and then we would start again, like that first frame, as you were saying, oftentimes the first frame,
Yeah.
that first frame was often the one that I would put the 5-star beside,
Yeah.
and it's going, okay, so we are innately on the same page here. So
Yeah.
that was really
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. And I had it easy for that photo shoot in a sense, because I mean, you say it was intimate. We shot it in my living room. We should probably tell people that. We shot it in my living room, which honestly, not necessarily shooting in my home, but it was in a sense my ideal photo shoot environment. Not because it was just my living room, but because it was just you and me. And there weren't assistants, there weren't creative directors, there weren't all these things that feel like a photo shoot. We were quite literally two dudes sitting in a living room.
Yeah.
And when I set up a portrait shoot specifically, to the degree that I can, commercial shoots, you don't always have this level of control, but if someone came to me and said, we want to shoot really, really good portraits. We want Matt to the 10th degree. Like do what you do the best you can do it. The first thing I think about is we're not setting up a photo shoot. We're setting up a conversation.
Oh, yes.
That's huge. Like
Yeah.
it's not about, sometimes it's cool, feeling like you're walking onto a set with the
Absolutely.
lights and
Yeah.
the stuff and the people moving, but it just gets people in their heads. And to me, I want people to feel like they're walking into my living room, whether we're at a big fancy studio
Yeah.
or walking into my living room. But looking back at that, it's funny to think of it that way.
Yeah.
I no longer live there. But it was, I think that photo shoot was effective because
because it was very quiet.
Yeah.
Intimate is a word that I use, and I know that can mean a lot of different things, but it really was this, in the best small way, there was a connection there, and it wasn't this big, loud set. And one of the reasons I leaned towards calling you in the first place is because your behind the scenes footage on your website, it shows the big studio with the full crew and the makeup table just over there and the behind the scenes, and you were very comfortable in your own skin in those, and everyone around was either doing their precise job or having fun, being very comfortable. And I thought, oh yeah, he gets this.
The less things that can come between the photographer and the subject, the more I'm going to be able to hone in on that thing.
Yeah.
That look in their eye, that moment of truth, whatever that is that resonates, I can access it more easily. Just the less noise, the less stuff, the less distraction.
Yeah. What does it look or feel like? What's your experience when you tap into that, when you find their truth right then and there? Can you describe sort of what goes on in Matt's head and heart?
I know it when I see it. I can never really anticipate it. I can plan for it. A lot of times people ask me like, how did you get this out of this person? Or like,
Right.
how do you get what you get out of people? Like,
Yeah.
I think hopefully in my work I think that's what I'm after. It's like because I don't have big, bright, smiley. I don't have like peak action. I don't,
Yeah.
they're very quiet,
Mhm.
my portraits.
Mhm.
But there's something undeniable there. And again, when people recognize it, it's profound. There's something there. To even me, it sounds like I'm being braggadocious, and I'm not, because it surprises me. It catches me off guard sometimes.
Yeah. Is authenticity a good word that would fit in there?
Definitely. I don't think it fully encompasses it, but that's kind of I think the precursor to it. Like it's definitely authenticity. It's usually a moment, and I don't have any tricks. I don't have any catchphrases. I don't have any. I say this, and then they always do this. I don't. I set it up. It's almost like hunting. Like I can control as much as I can control to like try to force the outcome I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But I can't make it show up. I just need to be there, be ready for it. It's almost like getting lucky. When I feel like I've nailed it, and I know I've nailed it, because like I said, when I've seen it, I know it when I see it, and it feels. So I'm going to answer your question. It feels like I've gotten away with something that I didn't really earn in a way. Like I feel like I
Yeah,
robbed a bank or something. Like
you've just described that you have indeed earned it.
yeah, I think I've earned it, but it feels like I got away with something. It feels like I've captured a ghost in a box. So I've caught the fish, the deer showed up. Like it just feels like I've gotten lucky. Now maybe I orchestrated all these moving parts to like help myself get lucky.
Sure.
Totally, but
Luck favors the prepared, I think.
Maybe some people have it. I don't have that level of control to say I get it, no problem. Every photo shoot, no matter how prepped I am, no matter who the subject is, no matter what control I have, there's always an unknown because I know I don't have ultimate control over that moment. But my accuracy is pretty good. I seem to get it.
Well, you are a very good dance partner, right? I think that the back and forth, the connection that you nurture throughout a photo shoot, it increases that luck that you talk about. And again, what's the saying? Luck favors the prepared. And you are very prepared.
Yeah.
In fact, it was one of the things that I talked about. I brought you up to a couple of photographer clients of mine who I work with on the side, and one of the things I was paying attention to during our time together is no session runs smoothly. Some little glitch is going to happen. And I wasn't looking for it until it happened, but then how you handled the little glitches, that something, maybe a battery, you needed to change batteries and something, or something wasn't quite working, or we kicked an extension cord and something came undone. I don't remember, but those little,
probably the dog was under
those
my
little
feet.
things. Oh,
I was probably tripping over the dog.
maybe so. But how you handled that said a lot about your character. Said a lot about how much you care about the energy in the space.
Yeah.
It said everything about how you did not see yourself as the subject or what the most important person in the room. Everything was to serve the session. Everything was to serve the energy in the room, which would elicit whatever it was that you were trying to get
moment.
out.
Yeah. It's all in service to a moment.
Yeah.
That's it.
Because having assisted and produced for so long, and then moving on to hiring other photographers, we've all seen the drama kings and queens where something comes unplugged or some little glitch, and they blow their stack.
Yeah.
Right, and they need to prove their worth and importance of the session by how passionate they are.
Yeah.
And you were the opposite, which I really appreciate. You're just like, no, it doesn't serve the session. What serves the session is plugging this back in, or moving the dog over a foot, or getting this new battery back in, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
As intimate as a setting as it was, you were very cognizant of that energy in the room. So you knew where you were going, and you knew how to keep us on the road to there. So I think you're selling yourself short just a little bit. You don't know
well, the trick is to prioritize the conversation over the photo shoot.
Yeah.
If I kick a cord and something comes unplugged, or we got to reboot, or whatever that is. Yeah, the photo shoot takes a hit. The conversation, the moment, the setting, like that. It's if we have a conversation and I make a flub, I don't go, son of a bitch, like we got to start over. Like you work through it, and you stay there. So I think that's probably what that is again, going into it. It's like the photos are secondary. If I can get you in a room and we can connect and engage in a good, meaningful conversation, the photos are kind of easy. I mean, they're secondary.
Well, they're almost a souvenir of that experience.
Yeah, right? That's a great word for it. It's a souvenir. It's evidence that we did this.
Yeah.
But if all the emphasis is put on the moment, the connection, the conversation, it's hard to get worked up over technical stuff. It really is.
Yeah. Well, earlier you mentioned getting lucky, and I think that you said it's sort of like hunting, which. Where did you grow up? You're from the Midwest. You know a little bit about hunting, actually. Tell me about your childhood.
I do and I don't. I'm not a hunter. I don't hunt, but I'm from Missouri. I'm from St. Louis. I grew up in the Midwest.
Okay.
I'm a Midwest boy through and through. I came out to LA about 4 or 5 years ago now.
Okay.
I've definitely embraced the West Coast lifestyle. Like, I love it here.
It's easy to do.
I have a lot of friends here. It's great, but I've fully I embrace my Midwestern boy nowadays more so than I did when I was there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, absence makes the heart grow fonder, maybe, and
oh, it's so true.
yeah,
Yeah, living like growing up in the Midwest, especially being a creative, it's like you think of the West Coast and New York and these places where like that's where stuff's really happening.
hmm
And then you get an opportunity to go there, and suddenly it's like so much of the things I value about myself are things that I never would have developed had I not grown up where I grew up.
true. Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm not a hunter, but I grew up in trucks and corn and hunting and fishing and
Yeah.
uh,
And so, what I would love to do is just hear about, what it was like to grow up there, and what was that transition to leave. Sort of, what was the energy that led you to move out and to come, several years ago out to the West Coast.
yeah. Well, it was a few things. Your first question was what was it like growing up there or living there? Um, Not a ton of creative people in the Midwest, generally speaking. Now, I certainly honed in on the ones that were there, and
Yeah.
that was my community. And there are great creatives there. It's not to say there's not brilliant artists there, because there are, but
Yeah.
they're not there in mass. It's not a destination for creatives. Um, so living there and growing up there, especially growing up there, there was an emphasis on the somebodies in the Midwest were usually athletes.
Yes.
Especially as a kid.
Mm.
Um, the Midwest looks the way it looks in a lot of movies. Like the high school quarterback that's the guy. It's not the school photographer.
Right.
I don't know if you even know this about me, but I was a musician long before I was a photographer.
Okay.
I played music
Same here.
a long time.
Yeah.
And as a kid, playing sports, that was the priority. School, sports, that was pretty much my life. I wanted a guitar. Like I wanted drums. I wanted my brother and I used to put on Christmas concerts as little kids with tennis rackets and paint cans and
Yeah.
we there was something about music. My parents both liked music, and our older brother was into music, and we were around music, but we weren't a creative family. We weren't
Hmm.
a musical family. Nobody played anything, but I'm grateful to, I had a lot of music in my life, but again, that kind of was where my creativity led me, was like, music. I'm like, that made sense to me. And I always wanted to do it. And that was always on my Christmas list. Like, I want a guitar.
Where did that transition come in from being really interested in music to primarily being interested in creating something visual?
My mom had recently purchased a new like vacation camera, like family.
Okay.
It was when digital cameras first started. The point and shoot with the zoom, like those first started kind of hitting.
So this is late 90s, early 2000s?
Early 2000s, probably closer to it. But we went. I remember my aunt and my cousin were in town, and my mom and I and the two of them, we went for a walk. There was this new highway being built that wasn't open yet. We were just going to walk the highway. There was this new camera. I took pictures of just whatever came to me. I
Whatever you
remember,
were interested in. You were seeing things.
yeah. So like there's this new highway being built, and there was this bridge, and I remember the sun was
Mhm.
behind it, and I remember taking a picture of that and looking at the camera and just like being like, damn, like that's something.
That's
Like,
something.
yeah, that's not just maybe this camera's really good now. I don't know, but that's something. And I remember like there's only two real like photos I really remember. And one, there was a dead coyote in the middle of the road or off, on the shoulder or something. And I remember taking just kind of a down shot of that, and that wasn't necessarily a shot that I looked back at and was like, damn, there's really something here. I wish I had that photo.
That was my next question is please
No,
tell me you have that.
I don't. I wish I had it, because at 35 I might look back at that photo and be like, actually I did have something here. I don't know. But when we got back from that walk, I kind of showed the camera to everyone, and I remember specifically, and it didn't click at the time, but years later it did. Everyone was kind of impressed with either what I took or the camera or both or whatever. But everyone was like, "Damn, like there are photographs in here."
These aren't just snapshots.
Yeah, and here we thought Matt
Photographs.
was just kind of quietly wandering off along this walk on his own. He was like,
Right.
damn, he was doing something. And I remember specifically my aunt saying, well, Matt, I think you found your calling. And at the time, I was like, literally, I didn't even know what that meant. Like, kind of had an idea what that meant, but I didn't really know what that meant, because I'm at an age where you don't really think about like what's my purpose? Like, what am I going to do in this life? You don't think like that when
What
you're
do
that
you want to
age.
be when you grow up?
Yeah.
God, that's a huge question as a kid.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember hearing that, and at the time, you have to remember, the other part of me was like, well, no, because I'm going to be a rock star. I play guitar now. Wait till you guys see me.
The guitar playing quarterback.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
In St. Louis.
But I remember, but I never forgot that, and it wasn't until much later, like all throughout high school, I didn't touch a camera
Mm-hmm.
at all. It was available to me. Looking back, I wish I would have, joined the school newspaper or something. But I was playing sports.
Mm-hmm.
In college, I, I studied media. I was a media communications major, and I kind of just I dragged my feet through school because I wasn't real clear on where I was going or what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I wanted to be a rock star, and I remember meeting with my counselor, and she laid out the electives that would pertain to the degree that I had kind of taken up, and one of them was photography. And honestly, my thought was, well, that sounds easy.
Yep, I
That
do know.
that's
Actually, I do know.
that was my thought, is, well, that sounds easy, and I can probably ace that course, and photography's cool. Maybe I can take pictures of my bandmates or
Yeah.
some self portraits to aid in my rock
Yeah.
stardom.
Right. Can I make a confession?
Yeah, I would love that.
In high school, I conned my way into commercial art class because I just wanted to be with all my cool friends that were on the soccer team. Right. Um, I say I conned it. The teacher knew I was lying outright. And said,
Yeah.
that I was really interested in photography because I couldn't draw anything. But um, the second year in, and things started to get a little heated, scholarships were being offered, and so it's like, oh, around junior and high school, as you mentioned, you begin to sort of think, all right, what is adulthood going to be like? And I remember thinking specifically, photography, pushing a button. That sounds easy.
Yeah.
How hard could that be?
I'm happy to hear this. I really am.
It's true. I mean, oh, how naive that was. But
Yeah.
but that's how it started. Is pushing a button. That sounds like a really easy job.
Yep, that was me. And like most things, I showed up for class. I did the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I got through it. And the first photo critique, everyone hangs their photos up, and we look at them, and this was like the big moment. And all these, like, a lot of these other photography students were so passionate, and I, looking back, I feel guilty because I was just like,
Right.
I can't wait to get home and play my guitar or whatever it was.
Right.
But I remember hanging my photos up, and people really being drawn to them, and great.
Yeah. Whew.
But I was
Pretty
like,
good grade.
little did they know, like, I thought I phoned this thing in, truly, because and so, not to go too far off track, but I remember the first project was like, I waited till like a day before I had no other choice, and I ran to like the sculpture park and took a bunch of photos, and then I remember going to the dark room, and everyone else had like been in there and like knew how, but again, I was just kind of coasting and phoning it in, and I got in there, and I remember like having to load my film. Was a disaster. I'm surprised I pulled it off, honestly, because I was like, oh shit, I should have paid attention. And it was clear to me that I had something. It was the first time, other than with music a little bit, that it was very clear to me, like, there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was the first thing I ever did where I'm like, I didn't even try, and I was pretty good at it. So anyway, at the end of that class, I remember my professor, where people are gathering their bags and leaving, and he pulled me aside and said something along the lines of like, because he saw what happened, he knew.
Yeah.
I hadn't really applied myself to the project.
Yeah.
But he also saw that it resonated with my classmates. And I don't remember specifically what he said, but something along the lines of, if you really apply yourself, you could be a very good photographer.
Yeah. That was the impact that you recall.
Yeah.
That is where it's at.
And he had this look about him, like, I know what you did.
Right.
I know what you did.
Yeah.
I've seen this a million times. The kid that ran to the sculpture park.
Yeah.
2 days before, I saw you in the dark room yesterday,
Right.
scrambling to get something on paper. But I heard that, and it felt good. I look back at that moment now and say that those were the two kind of waking up moments. My aunt saying, I think you found your calling, and my first photo professor being like, if you quit phoning it in
Yeah.
and apply yourself, you could be good at this.
To learn how to play guitar, to become good at sports, no matter how gifted, you have to work. Like you got to put in the hours and you got to put in the attention. That's what the work is. And so you knew at that point, you knew what work was. You knew what work entailed, but you just hadn't applied it to the idea, the concept of photography.
Exactly, because it was never, I don't want to say it wasn't allowed, but it was never encouraged. It was never cultivated.
Yeah.
It was never like, well, you need to work on something because you do. And I was certainly taught the lessons of hard work.
Yes.
It was just applied to areas that were sort of the status quo.
Yeah.
And I don't
Sure.
there was a sense of identity that was probably never cultivated early on.
Mhm.
To no fault of my parents, because again,
Yeah.
we grew up where we grew up.
It's just culture. The culture of it. It wasn't prevalent in the culture that you grew up in.
Yeah.
Being a creative person, and I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but
Of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
having come from somewhat similar, yeah, you were just, where I grew up, you were going to work at the paper mill, or
Yeah.
you were going to be a soybean farmer, or barber, something like that.
hmm I don't want to say I outgrew the Midwest or outgrew St. Louis, because I didn't. I mean, I was young when I moved, and but I was fully committed to the long haul of it.
Yeah.
And I knew maybe I haven't outgrown this place, and maybe I never will. I probably never will. Many photographers have made long careers in the Midwest, but I wanted to. I wanted to put myself into a bigger pond and
Yeah.
see. I was at a point in my life where I didn't want to wait any longer to make that decision, and I knew I would regret never finding out.
Yeah.
If I didn't do it now, I'll probably never do it, because
Mhm.
before I know it, I'm going to be in my 40s and have kids and own a home, and it's going to be way harder to do then.
Other places to put that energy.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I kind of had that moment where I'm like, I either do this now, and maybe I fail, maybe it doesn't work, maybe I come back.
Yeah.
But at least I will have known that I swung for the fences.
Yeah. So you moved to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And what do you find? What's it like? How does is it instant stardom? Is it a big struggle? Does the pendulum swing back
The
and
hardest time of my life, by far, and not for the reasons you would expect. Like, yes, moving here and making a career as a photographer, terribly hard.
Terribly hard.
Terribly hard. And
Saturated market, overly saturated.
it's saturated, and yeah, you can't overstate that enough, because because I came here ready to compete. I didn't come here thinking like I'm the best, but I wouldn't have come here if I didn't think that I could belong here.
Yeah, you were geared up pregame.
I came here thinking like I can compete in that market. I really felt that.
Yeah.
What I underestimated was how hard it was to break through the noise in this market, because the oversaturation. There's so much noise that you can be the greatest artist, the greatest actor. I can't imagine how many brilliant actors are here that have never been seen by the people who need to see them to take them somewhere.
Yeah.
Because in photography, it felt that way. But when I say it's the hardest time of my life, yes, photography, changing markets, showing up on people's radars, crafting a portfolio and an identity and a brand and a voice, terribly hard. What I underestimated most was what it would do to me as a human being to sever myself from every sense of community, friendship, connection, familiarity. I didn't have anyone when I moved here, and I moved straight to Topanga, which is like, for people that don't know, Topanga is like the sticks of Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's isolating itself.
It is. Weeks go by, and I'm like, if I'm not on a job or I'm retouching or something, weeks go by, and I'm like, I haven't left this canyon. I got to get out of here.
As
and then
beautiful as it is,
and it's gorgeous. It's quiet. It's serene. It's beautiful.
But there's a reason why it's popular and people love it, is because it is the antithesis of the chaos that Los Angeles can be.
Oh yeah. And when I get into the city, I feel it. It's like my head's in a microwave. It feels good to get back to Topanga, but it can be isolating even now that I feel like I have a sense of community and new friendships.
So yes, hard work means a lot, but it doesn't always get you through. Talk to me about a lucky break from all of the hard work. Like where was the first turning point, and sort of what when the rubber met the road and you started to get some traction?
It's funny because you say that and I'm like, I don't know if it's really like has there been that moment where I'm like, all right, I've really broken through. Like, have I had a breakthrough moment in Los Angeles? I don't know that I have, but I'll say this: a turning point was I came out here again because as a photographer in the Midwest, you kind of have to be a generalist. You got to do a lot of things, and all throughout my photo career, people told me, especially, you got to specialize, find your voice, do that one thing,
Yeah.
and stick to it.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but this food magazine wants to pay me every month to shoot the thing, and this architecture firm wants to shoot this, and it's like it was money, and I was making that money, and it was working, and so it's like that's always available in the Midwest, but out here, again, like as I've already said, it's hard to break through the noise. But if people don't have a quick, solid, clear understanding of your voice and who you are and what you do, if you get that chance,
Yeah.
at best they're just going to be confused and they're not going to remember you. They
Yeah.
might go, this guy's really good and he does a lot of things, but 10 minutes later they're in a Zoom meeting and doing
Well,
other things.
that's precisely it.
And when a job comes up and they go, all right, we need a guy who does this thing, they're not going to think of you as the guy that does the thing.
Yeah.
They're probably not even going to remember you because there's a million people behind you. So to answer your question, things started working when I kind of had to go back to the drawing board and figure out who the hell I was as a photographer. And that was both challenging and frustrating, but extremely freeing. Because we opened this conversation talking about my work and sort of what that is and how we would define it. And 2 years ago, I don't know if it would be as clear to me what that was. Some of the hallmarks of it would be there, but I don't know that I would so clearly articulate like who I am as a photographer and like what I do.
Yeah.
But I found meeting with creative directors, art buyers, what was absolutely necessary was like articulation. How do I articulate to them what I do?
Yeah.
Because there's a million people here who make really great photographs of all different styles and kinds.
Yeah.
And the only way I'm ever going to be remembered is to be the guy that does the thing.
Yeah, that's true. And going back to my initial thoughts about why I wanted to meet you and work with you was that having hired a lot of creatives, having hired a lot of photographers, whatever role that I was in where I was hiring creatives, I was wearing 12 hats, right? And for me, I needed to see a portfolio or a website or a body of work where I knew what I was going to get back. Because as soon as I hired you and communicated what the job was and we agreed on everything, I'm turning around and dealing with the other 54 things that I've got to deal with that day. And I need to be able to trust the person that I've made this agreement with, so that I can turn around and go do those other things, knowing that that is taken care of, right? And even as a photographer, it was my goal later in my career. I realized my goal is not to create the best image that did all of these different things that I would hope that it would do. Really, my job was to make the person who hired me look like a rock star for hiring.
Yeah.
Because they just need it easy, right? Everybody who hires photographers now, that's not the only hat they're wearing. And they have rent or a mortgage or kids, or they've got all of these other things that are jeopardized by hiring the wrong person. And so why do the photographers that are so busy just stay busy? Is because they've got it down. Like they've got the routine down. One of the things that photographers, any creative kind of struggles with is doing the work without letting other things about the assignment affect it, right? So like budget, if you're used to making X amount for a job and that's in your wheelhouse, suddenly if you get a job that is 10x that, 10 times more, that's a lot of stress just because suddenly you're not really thinking about the image. You're thinking about just not blowing the job.
Yeah.
So now that you've been doing this a while and super strong portraiture, again, when I hired you, I sort of knew what I was going to get. I was in my default mode
Mm-hmm.
of hiring a creative, and it turned out it was great. But I loved hearing you say at the beginning of the conversation that, you know, the session that we had, which I assume is like a lot of sessions you have, like it was really quiet and small and intimate, and that's where those are your favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you can't handle all the big stuff, because I've seen the behind the scenes, and you are,
The trick is making the big stuff feel like that.
yeah,
That's the trick.
yeah, beyond the simplicity of your images. Why do you think that they are valuable to art buyers and creative directors?
I think in the fast-paced, chaotic, always buzzing environment of visual imagery that we exist in today, um, whatever it is I'm doing offers people a sense of calm and stillness and a stage of quietness that allows something to really be said.
Yeah.
Because there's so much noise that I don't think we need more. I think we need less. And I think that's what ultimately my images communicate. There's nothing in my images that doesn't need to be there. If it's
All
unnecessary,
purposeful. Is it fair to say everything in your images are purposeful?
yeah, that's a good way. If it's needed, it's there. If it's not needed, it's not there. And I try to leave only what's necessary or strengthening. And what I end up with is something that's quiet and still and simple. But if you give it a second, there's a lot of strength to it, and there's a loudness to it
Well,
that seems to cut through more, faster, noise.
Well, as you're saying that, what I want to make sure that you get in there is the power that resonates out of your images, because we started this conversation with, I think your images offer a connection to the subject.
I don't publish images that aren't real. And when I say real, like they're the connection, the truth of them, authenticity.
Yeah.
I know, I can take 1,000 photos of someone in a portrait session, and there's only one that anyone's ever going to see, because that's the only one where I
That's
see
right. Yeah.
the truth of it.
Yeah.
They're not in their head. They're not thinking about what they look like.
Yeah.
We're not thinking about what this is supposed to be. It's just a moment of truth.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
sometimes it's that first frame, like we talked about, and sometimes it's the 979th frame.
Yep.
And listen, as a photographer, I have exhausted people in front of my lens before.
Mhm.
And when they get to that point of their raw, exhausted self, then then you see the real person.
Yep. You could almost chart it out as a graph.
You could.
It's like they're not even on yet. That's sometimes when I can grab it.
Yeah.
And then they're in their head, and they're thinking, and you're right. There's part of what I do that I think that's what I'm aiming for. It's like an unconscious truth. Like I want to capture someone with their guard down.
I want to transition from talking about your commercial work and how it is very simple and impactful and powerful, to your personal work, your personal projects that you have going on, because I view it as very different. I think the few images that I've seen, and I can't wait to hear you talk more about it in depth, is they're not necessarily clean or simple, but absolutely as impactful, both as single images, standalone images, and as this larger body of work you're creating. Can you talk to us a little bit about your personal projects?
Yeah, I would love to. My day-to-day commercial work is portraiture. My personal project I've been shooting for 6 years now. I travel and I shoot demolition derby events at county and state fairs.
Now explain to people watching and listening what a demolition derby is, just in case they don't know.
A demolition derby, in short, is a set of cars that are in an arena, like a mud pit.
Mm-hmm.
The flag goes, the cars go crazy, and it's like real life bumper cars.
It's a small scale arena.
It could be rickety bleachers. Sometimes they're the grandstand. They're different sizes, but yeah, quite literally, it's cars crashing into one another until there's one left.
So you're photographing not only the event, but I think I've seen a couple images where you're photographing the culture around it too.
Yeah, I think of it. When I first started doing it, I didn't think really anything. I was just I was out with a camera, just discovering this thing. I was curious. I was just exploring. I was chasing what piqued my interest in photographing it. Now that I've really given it a life and consider it a project that I'm very diligently working on, I consider it a portrait of demolition derby. So yes, it's cars smashing into one another, but that's actually kind of not the highlight of the project as far as I see it. I photograph the drivers.
Yep.
I photograph people in the stands. I photograph the cars.
Yep.
I'm there to do the same thing I do in every photo shoot, which is help people express their most authentic, empowered self, and to get out of the way of it and let it. Because I'm there. I'm there because I see it. Yes, there's a lot of visual stimulation. There's flames and cars smashing into each other and crazy looking people, but I see in it a beauty that deserves amplification, and I want to be that guy. I want to make it look glorious.
So as we talk about demolition, it's not just for fun. Like you're gonna.
It's that too.
It is for fun,
Yeah.
but you're also thinking about it in different ways. Like you're talking about potentially publishing a book. I think you've already started at least laying it out. And
I have. The original goal was I was going to make a book at the end of this year. I started that process, and it was going well. I felt there were untapped regions of the story. So I dedicated one more year because I have to put some bumpers on the alleyway, tap into the regions I haven't tapped into, and hopefully find more of the story. But I have decided like this is the year.
This is the year.
And this is also the first year that it's kind of it's not my priority, but it's become a priority. Where it used to be like when I have free time, I'll do the derby thing. It's a goal now. I have a plan, and it's fun to shoot that way.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. This has been been fantastic. It was every bit as good as I was thinking and hoping it would be.
I hope so. Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.